Well, I sure as shit didn't have that on my bingo card this year. What is up, everybody, and welcome to my review of Godzilla Minus One, the latest Japanese Godzilla film. Now, to set the stage properly, just in case you guys are finding me for the first time or have just started following me recently, I'm not a fan of kaiju films. Like, I've seen quite a few of them, all American. I haven't seen any Japanese ones, which I know is gonna set a lot of people off as, well, no wonder you haven't seen the good ones. It's just honestly not a genre of films that does anything for me. Whether the gigantic towering monster is by themselves destroying cities, or the gigantic towering monster is fighting another gigantic towering monster, just does nothing for me. So I never get excited about any movie in this genre, whether it's American or not. Godzilla Minus One came out this weekend, and I have seen nothing but huge hype for it. I've seen nothing but huge buzz for it. And then when I started to actually see early reviews and then a bunch of reviews from people that I know and trust just really overwhelmingly praising this thing as possibly the best Godzilla movie ever and just wipes the floor with anything that America has done with this property, it started to pique my interest a bit. So I got a chance to scamper away for a couple of hours this afternoon and check it out, and I will tell you, as somebody that does not really like kaiju movies, and in 33 years of being on this earth has never seen a Godzilla film that I would say I liked. This broke that trend. This is finally a Godzilla movie that I can say, that was good. Starting off with the positives, the main thing that sets this apart from all of the other kaiju movies that I have seen and not really cared for is that this is the only one I have seen that has given me a really good story filled with really interesting characters that I'm invested in, that I care about, and that I don't mind following, waiting for the Godzilla stuff to happen. That's usually the Achilles heel for most of these Godzilla or kaiju movies, is that I'm sitting here waiting for the action sequences because the characters suck and I don't care what happens to them, and then you don't really get too much of the kaiju fighting to balance out all of the human stuff. And this is the film that finally got that balance right, getting enough Godzilla action, but all of the time that it spends focusing on the characters, which is most of the runtime of the movie, you care, you're invested, and it's compelling stuff. This movie is set really close after the end of World War II, and so it's exploring a lot of different things in that setting. You've got Japan that's in shambles, this is post the nuclear bomb dropping, and so there's a good section of Japan that is just absolutely devastated physically. Japan as a nation is devastated as far as like almost having shame after the war, trying to reclaim what they feel about themselves and how to move on past this gigantic earth-shattering event of World War II. And the main character, the protagonist of the film, is a kamikaze pilot who is basically too cowardly to carry out the kamikaze side of his job. And so he makes an excuse, lands on this island, Godzilla appears in one of his younger forms, and then later on we catch up with him after Godzilla has grown in the setting the rest of the movie takes place in. And it's exploring PTSD, it's exploring survivor's guilt, it's exploring a man trying to find his purpose in life amongst a nation trying to rediscover their purpose. It's really deep, profound, compelling stuff for a Godzilla movie. I mean, it's deep, compelling stuff for any movie. And so while I was definitely jonesing for all of the Godzilla carnage and the building wrecking, or if anything else was going to show up and fight Godzilla, like I was looking forward to all of that stuff that all of us want to see in a Godzilla movie, but when we were waiting to get there, or we were in the scenes in between those action sequences, I was totally fine just hanging out with these characters and exploring all those really deep themes. The special effects are incredible in this movie, and I was actually shocked to find out after I walked out and did a little Google magic that this movie only cost about $15 million to make. This is one of those times where us movie fans are going to pivot to Hollywood and say, how the fuck did this look this good with $15 million when you have given absolute ass to us that has cost $200 and $300 million just this year? As somebody who has never spent any time in a movie production, like, it just genuinely boggles my mind. Like, how do we have a movie that looks this good that only costs $15 million when we have movies that cost over 10 times that amount that don't look a third this good, that actually look downright awful? Like, where does that money go? Godzilla looks great, like the design of him is awesome, as well as the special effects in regards to how he looks, his heat wave, his like nuclear energy beam that comes out, the destruction of cities, the destruction that happens on the ocean, things getting thrown and flung around, like it all looks great. I really like the way that they use the old school Godzilla theme, the old school Godzilla score. Whether or not I've seen those movies or not, I know that score. It fits this character and these types of movies very well. So the moments that it popped back up, it really got you pumped, and it kind of gave you that really tense, impending doom feeling that you should have in a Godzilla movie. And finally, speaking of impending doom, I much preferred the tone and the direction that this movie took in regards to Godzilla, in the respect of making him a horror villain, making him a monster that you should fear, as opposed to pretty much all of the other Godzilla movies that I've seen, where they kind of frame him as this misunderstood necessary evil. Like, he's a monster that could fucking kill us all in 2 seconds, but we need him to fight this other thing. And, you know, we like Godzilla. You know, he's kind of an asshole, but he's a cool asshole. When Godzilla shows up in this movie, you're supposed to be afraid of him. And you are. Like, they frame it in a way to where he is terrifying. These people are terrified of him, and you are terrified of what the implications of his arrival means when he sets foot onto Japan, whenever the blue spine starts to light up, whenever he is marching towards one of the main characters. And that one element honestly might have been the big thing in this movie that tipped the scale into finally giving me a kaiju movie that I liked. I prefer fearing these creatures as opposed to just waiting like a sports event for him to punch the other creature. Moving on to the mixed aspects, I'm gonna say the Godzilla sequences themselves. Now, this is a movie like a lot of the other kaiju movies where the destruction, the humans versus Godzilla action sequences, that's not really the focus of the movie. That is not the predominant thing you're going to see on screen. You're gonna spend a lot more time with the human characters, exploring their character arcs, exploring the themes this movie is going for. So when you get there, they need to have an impact. And to be honest, even with my limited amount of experience within this film series and this genre, I feel like most of the Godzilla action that we get here is pretty familiar. It's the same things we've seen before. It's him knocking down a building with his tail. It's him stepping on shit. It's him shooting his laser beam. It's him chasing after boats and stuff. So it looks great. It's thrilling, it's done, it's shot very well, it's rendered very well graphically, so it's among the best executed versions of those, but for the most part, it's all stuff we have seen before. What tips this into the mixed scale instead of a very light negative for me is that the one thing that we do get in here that I feel was unique is that the movie takes a bit of a Jaws flavor, a bit of a Jaws edge in specific sequences here in regards to Godzilla and people fighting or running from him while he's in the water. And I thought those were the best sequences in the movie as far as Godzilla action. And especially the third act, when you start getting into the whole plot that they come up with of how to finally vanquish Godzilla, not only was it unique, but I like the fact that it kind of goes in more of a smart science-y route than a big slam-bang blockbuster shoot missiles and drop nukes on them approach. And not only is that satisfying just as far as action sequence and as far as executing the tension of the third act, but it also wraps up into the themes that they're exploring with these characters and how Japan is going to advance past where they were as a nation and what their approach was during World War II. Moving on to the negatives, the only real one that I have is just, I feel like the acting style of Japan is a little goofy sometimes. You know, this movie is very serious, it takes itself very seriously, but there's a few performances, a few characters here that have a very cartoonish element to them that I don't know if really fits in the tone this movie is going for. And it's just a Japanese style. I've seen it in pretty much every foreign film that I've seen from that region of the world. So it's not like a stylistic choice that they decided to put in this movie. That's just kind of their style. Whether they're trying to execute humor or not, there's always a little bit of a goofy, over-the-top sense to some of their performances. So those moments I didn't feel like belonged in the movie, and they kind of just felt awkward to me. And the only other negative that I have is that in the third act, when they are trying to execute this plan to take out Godzilla, there's a couple of elements that were certainly intended to be like a surprise for the audience, like, oh my god, I forgot about that, or oh my god, I didn't expect that. And to me, they were telegraphed very directly. So it's clear they were meant to be a surprise by the way that they entered the movie in the third act. But then they pretty much had the writing on the wall leading up to the third act of what exactly is going to happen. It's hard for me to explain, and I'm probably talking in circles without getting into any detail. I don't want to get into any spoiler territory here, but just to me, while still being a very satisfying third act, the elements that were supposed to be a nice surprise for the audience were obvious. So all in all, guys, this movie is not like best of the year for me. I don't want to be hyperbolic or overpraise it. This is not a movie that's so good that suddenly now I'm gonna go dig through all of the other Kaiju and Godzilla movies I've never seen. Like, it isn't impacting me on that level. But from somebody who never really has interest in these movies, didn't have interest in this one, and just kind of walked in out of pure morbid curiosity, I got much more than I ever expected to get out of it, and to me, this is not only the best Godzilla movie that I've ever seen, it's the best Kaiju movie that I've ever seen. So take that for what it's worth. That's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, please click over here for all of my 2023 new release reviews. I'm also going to put my review of Silent Night, the other new release this weekend, for you to check out. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.